November 1st, 1396. St. Paul's Cathedral in London glows with the trembling light of hundreds of candles, their flames dancing against the ancient Gothic windows. The organ's mournful notes reverberate through the vast naves, mingling with the soft tread of a royal procession advancing down the central aisle. But this is no ordinary ceremony. It is the wedding of a 6-year-old child. Isabelle of France, Europe's youngest princess, walks toward the altar, her tiny frame weighed down by heavy golden silks that trail across the cold stone floor. The delicate crown atop her head seems to crush her fragile shoulders, its jewels glinting in the candlelight. In moments, she will be proclaimed Queen of England, a title that seals a political alliance destined to reshape the fates of two nations. Behind the splendor lies a heart-wrenching truth. A child has been offered as a sacrifice to the ruthless ambitions of adults. How did a girl so young become the centerpiece of such a brutal diplomatic game? To unravel Isabel's tragedy, we must return to 14th century France, a kingdom shrouded in the chaos of royal madness. Born on November 9, 1389 at the Louvre Palace, Isabelle was the daughter of King Charles VI of France and Queen Isabeau of Bavaria. As their fourth daughter, she entered a world darkened by war and intrigue, her life marked from birth by the shadows of a fractured court. Her father, Charles VI, known as Charles the Mad, was plagued by bouts of insanity that began at age 24. In his darkest moments, he failed to recognize his wife or children, believed his body was made of glass that would shatter at a touch, or fled through the palace corridors screaming of invisible enemies pursuing him. France languished in disarray, governed by feuding regents, while the true king remained a prisoner of his own mind. Isabel's mother, Isabeau, was a figure of equal controversy, ambitious, calculating, and rumored to indulge in lovers while neglecting her children. Chroniclers of the time painted her as a woman who wielded her husband's illness to amass power, treating her daughters as pawns in Europe's political chessboard. In this toxic environment, Isabelle grew up surrounded by palace intrigues and instability. France was torn apart by the Hundred Years' War, with England, internal conflicts between Armagnacs and Burgundians, and the ripple effects of royal madness. For a sensitive child, witnessing her father's tormented episodes and her mother's icy detachment left scars that would linger for life. By 1396, at just 6 years old, a diplomatic opportunity arose that would forever alter her destiny. Richard II of England, seeking peace after years of war with France, aimed to secure his throne through a strategic marriage. Having lost his beloved first wife, Anne of Bohemia, he needed an alliance to bring political and financial stability. French advisors, led by the Duke of Berry, saw a chance to forge peace. They proposed a marriage between Isabelle and Richard, offering a staggering dowry of £800,000 and a 28-year truce. For a France crippled by war, it was an offer too tempting to refuse, even if it meant sacrificing a child. Negotiations unfolded with the cold precision of a merchant's deal. Isabel's age, shockingly young, even by medieval standards, sparked debate. Some English advisors argued for waiting until she was 12, an age deemed suitable for consummating a marriage. But Richard II, grappling with rebellion's financial ruin and the threat of deposition, could not afford delay. French gold and external peace outweighed concerns about the bride's youth. In October 1396, the terms were finalized. Isabelle of France would be delivered to England as a political offering, a child placed on the altar of royal diplomacy. Her farewell at the Louvre was a carefully staged spectacle to impress the English ambassadors. Charles VI, in a rare moment of lucidity, held his daughter close, tears streaming down his face as he blessed her departure. Isabeau, ever detached, treated the parting as a triumphant transaction. Isabelle, too young to grasp the gravity of her journey, saw it as a fleeting adventure. She clutched a few cherished toy dolls and a small pet dog that had been her solace in the lonely halls of the Louvre. The journey from Calais to London spanned weeks, marked by lavish ceremonies in every English town the entourage passed. Local authorities vied to outdo each other with grand receptions, but Isabelle, exhausted and overwhelmed by the pomp, often wept, begging to return home. In London, Richard II orchestrated a wedding to rival any in Europe. St. Paul's Cathedral was adorned with interwoven French and English fabrics, symbolizing the union of kingdoms. Thousands of candles imported from France bathed the scene in a golden glow, while choirs sang in Latin and French. It was a spectacle meant to dazzle subjects and proclaim England's diplomatic triumph. Richard II, though reluctant, stood as a resolute groom, At 29, he was a refined man, a patron of arts and literature, still mourning his first wife. Marrying a child visibly unsettled him, but political necessity trumped personal qualms. During the ceremony, Isabel remained silent, her wide eyes darting nervously in the overwhelming grandeur. The Archbishop of Canterbury knelt to place a ring on her tiny finger, its weight a symbol of the burden she now carried. Declared Queen of England, she showed no joy, only confusion and a growing sense of fear. At the English court, Isabel's youth initially shielded her. Richard II, to his credit, treated her more as a daughter than a wife, providing French tutors, preserving her native customs, and ensuring her royal dignity. She was given private apartments at Westminster Palace, a manor, and dedicated servants. Yet her fragile happiness shattered in September 1399. Richard II, facing a rebellion led by Henry Bolingbroke, was deposed and later murdered at Pontefract Castle. At 10 years old, Isabel became a widow without ever truly being a wife. Richard's death posed a dilemma for England. Isabel was a legitimate queen, but her unconsummated marriage left no heirs. Worse, the £800,000 dowry had been spent, and returning her to France meant repaying funds that no longer existed. Henry IV, the new king, kept Isabel as a gilded prisoner, hoping to leverage her in future negotiations. Confined in comfort at Havering Castle, she spent 3 years fighting for her freedom. Her desperate letters to her French family reveal a girl aged beyond her years by grief. "I write to you in tears," she penned to her father, "held here as a captive, far from all I love, with no hope of return." Her pleas finally stirred Charles VI in a moment of clarity. He demanded her return, and in 1401, after protracted negotiations, Isabel was sent back to France. But the girl who left Paris at 6 was now a 12-year-old, prematurely weathered by trauma. Her return to the Louvre brought no solace. France remained mired in chaos, and her family treated her as a political burden rather than a cherished daughter. Isabel's tragedy was far from over. In 1405, at 16, her mother arranged a second marriage to Charles of Orleans, a young French poet and nobleman. This time, Isabel found what her childhood lacked, a marriage rooted in mutual affection. Charles, sensitive and intellectual, genuinely loved her. Together, they found joy in poetry, art, and a bond that defied their political origins. But happiness was fleeting. In 1407, Charles was captured at the Battle of Agincourt and imprisoned in England for 25 years. Isabel, once again a widow, in all but name, sank back into solitude and dependence on the French court. In the years that followed, Isabel lived quietly, dedicating herself to charity and the arts. Her experience as England's child queen gave her a unique perspective on politics, which she used discreetly to advise her family. In 1409, she gave birth to her only child, Joan of Orleans, a daughter who would grow up without her father. Motherhood offered fleeting comfort, tinged with the bitter knowledge that Joan might face the same fate used as a political tool in arranged marriages. Isabelle of France died in 1409 at age 20 from complications after childbirth. Her life had been wholly dictated by others' political needs. Sacrificed at 6 in a diplomatic marriage, widowed at 10, imprisoned at 12, remarried at 16 for political gain, and a practical widow at 18 when her second husband was captured. Her death passed almost unnoticed by chroniclers, a stark contrast to the grandeur of her first wedding. Isabel had fulfilled her role as a political pawn, producing an heir and sealing alliances, but never lived for herself. Her story raises profound questions about the role of women in medieval politics and the human cost of royal diplomacy. It reveals how children, especially noble girls, were treated as commodities, their lives subjugated to the ambitions of parents and kings. Over 600 years later, Isabel's tragedy endures as a haunting reminder of the horrors of child marriage and the objectification of innocence for political ends. The princess, delivered as a diplomatic gift, never knew a true childhood. From age 6, she bore responsibilities meant for adults, her life a ceaseless offering to the gods of medieval politics. Isabelle of France remains an eternal symbol of childhood's vulnerability before unchecked power. Her memory urges us to remember that behind every treaty, alliance, and political marriage in history, there were often children whose lives were shattered to serve the mighty. The girl who became queen at 6 paid the ultimate price for a fleeting peace between France and England, her happiness and ultimately her life.